Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and it's time for another breakfast with Blaha. Today we're having yogurt, almond butter, frozen blueberries. I'm going to utter a statement that historically for this channel would have been blasphemy, and I'll explain why in a second. I legitimately believe that for most purposes, most lifters and athletes can replace the barbell back squat with the safety squat bar box squat. Now, anyone who's followed me in the long term, all the way back to 2012, remember the original channel in 2012? This is my second fitness channel. It's the very first video I made. It's been re-uploaded. Ice Cream Fitness 5x5 was my very first informative video put up on YouTube. It's what put me on the map originally. Got me a shout out from the Hodge twins. And I kind of said in that video that if you don't want to back squat, I don't care, like go F yourself. Because if you squat every workout for a 5x5 on that program. So me stating that and the fact that I used to say that squats were not optional, it's just kind of funny, but it shows how we evolve with knowledge. And here's the thing. 30 years ago, I would say the barbell back squat was a requirement if you wanted to maximize both size, strength, performance, all those things. Athletes needed the back squat. We hadn't thought of correct alternatives. Leg press isn't going to do it, not on its own. Why do we squat? We squat to build our legs, and to some extent our back, hip extensors. We squat to get stronger. We squat for more power, more athletic performance. All right, safety bar box squat does all those things. We could argue it does on many of them better. Not necessarily the quads, right? But it still works all of that. What are the primary movers? Therefore, they get the most hypertrophy on a squat. Quads, adductors, glutes, and not in that order. Glutes and adductors have been found in studies, in one study that actually looked at this, the only one that has, they grew slightly more than the quads did, but all three of them grew significantly. They're primary movers. What is the safety bar box squat? Particularly the way I program it. Speed work, max work. We don't really rep it. Well, what do we get out of it? Well, we can get a decent amount of hypertrophy, but we wouldn't use the squat necessarily. For a more advanced lifter, the squat's not going to maximize your lower body hypertrophy because by itself, the workloads are so high in terms of fatigue, axial loading, everything else, that we really need supplemental work. We need it to build our legs as big as possible. My legs were always big. They were big before I started training. They were big before I was doing a lot of supplemental work, and they're even bigger now that I do supplemental work more than just squatting, right? You guys have seen me do a lot of single leg stuff over the last couple years, right? Belt squats, all that stuff. But we're going to do supplemental work anyways, because you're only going to be able to handle so much. But safety bar on a box is easier on recovery. It has less axial loading. Okay, people will say, yeah, but it's not preparing you to handle heavy loads with your upper back. You sure it doesn't? Because isn't that the fix? How many coaches out there and lifters say, oh, if your upper back needs more strength on a back squat, the safety bar is the solution. Because it builds the T-spine more with less weight. Okay? And it forces you to use less weight. Individuals who can do an all-out max on the safety bar as good as a back squat are rare. The majority can't. On average, 10% less. You got 10% less weight loaded up on top of you, yet you're still working that area that we're worried about being able to handle the heavy weights with. To improve it, we get similar amounts of lower body hypertrophy. Okay? And now you start talking about a lot of athletes, grapplers and stuff like that. Well, that safety bar is even better. But when we go to a box, we get a higher rate of force production off the box. Again, it's been studied. Highest rate of force production of any squat. Development of speed and power. We're forced to take probably another 10% off on the box. Even better for recovery. Less axial loading. Better upper back development. More rate of force production development. It's better for athletes. Now, people say, okay, but what else? Well, then we come to the other big one. The big problem with doing, especially a lot of low bar squatting. Shoulders. A lot of you younger kids don't understand this. You're 22. You've never dealt with shoulder inflammation with back squatting. With that straight bar, particularly low bar position. See where I'm going with this? Starts to really inflame the shoulders. Makes it hard to specialize in other stuff. Safety bar removes all that. So do some of the other bar, camber bars. Buffalo bars do that to some extent too. One of the reasons the buffalo bar was invented. All right. Less shoulder inflammation and fatigue. Means we can specialize more in things like benching. All right. Because our shoulders aren't as beat up. And it does carry over. A lot of people say, well, is there carryover? Well, I met some guys who basically safety bar box squat for most of their squatting who are ultra elite strong. Not my little 600-pound squat strong. I'm talking 800 plus pound raw squatters. Yeah, there's ones out there who do this. And if they can build that strength off of this tool, why can't you maximize your strength off of it? But we're doing it with less shoulder fatigue. All right, how many other sports does that matter? How about throwers? Anyone who is in a throwing sport? Anyone who's in an overhead sport? What are we bringing to the table here? We're bringing a lot. Now, a lot of people will chime in and say, well, front squats do a lot of that. Well, no, front squats have a higher skill component. They have mobility component because you got to have the wrist and shoulder mobility and everything else to get in that rack position. And the safety bar is a lot better. We don't have to deal with that. The caveat being, if you have athletes you need to clean. If you're going to train the clean, front squats really are almost mandatory. They're going to bring a lot to your clean. It's going to help you tremendously, and a lot of it has to do with being able to support that rack position. Because on a full clean, you have to catch that in that rack position and then drop into a front squat and then come back up dynamically. Well, practicing the front squat makes a lot of sense in that context. But if you're not going to clean, the safety bar is better in every way. Better in every way. And it's easier on the shoulders, the wrist. We're never limited in our load by our rack position. It's a superior tool. So when you start looking at it overall for the things that we really want to get out of a squat, for most athletes and lifters, a safety bar box squat is a potential replacement. And I say that not saying, oh, if you're still back squatting instead, you're dumb or you're never going to be elite or anything else. I'm not saying that at all. That's not true. What I'm presenting is that back squat's a great tool. A lot of people argue the king of all exercises. I don't think that's necessarily wrong historically. But we have developed new methods. We've developed new tools for the gym. And quite frankly, I can tell you the only reason a person shouldn't be using the safety bar, at least some, is because they don't have access to it. If you have access to one and you never use it, like you're leaving a lot off the table. Right? It should be at least partially worked into your training if your gym has one or you have the ability to get one. Yeah, it's a very useful tool. All right, guys, well, that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.